Games Workshop generally make some pretty decent hobby tools. I've regularly mentioned my love of the painting handles, spray stick and mould line remover in particular, but there's one tool in particular that has left a black mark in Games Workshop's history, and this product really was terrible. It was so terrible, in fact, that rumour has it that Games Workshop had the person responsible for it taken out the back and shot, and that they're now buried underneath the rhino outside Warhammer World. It was so terrible that the designer's children, and even his children's children, are banned from entering any Games Workshop store for life. Now, I have no idea if these rumours are true, but today I'm going to find out for myself just how fucking terrible this tool really is. I'm Benji, and welcome to Benji's Hobbies. I am, of course, talking about this, the Citadel Spray Gun. Based off the Badger 350 spray gun, but remodeled to look like a Warhammer 40k flamer, this was Games Workshop's answer to the airbrush, designed specifically for base coating multiple or large models quickly. Unlike an airbrush though, this thing didn't run off a compressor. Instead, it was designed to be used in conjunction with a can of spray gun propellant, which is essentially compressed air in a can. When it was first released, it was priced at £18.50, and the cans of propellant were £5.50 per can, which, accounting for inflation, would be about £25 and £7 in today's money. From the limited research I've done, it looks like it was launched back in 2008 and was discontinued sometime in the mid-2010s. The first mention I can find of it is in a video on the no longer active YouTube channel Games Workshop Studio, where there is a rather grainy demonstration of how to use it and some troubleshooting points. Watching through some of the videos on this channel is a bit of an eye-opener to see just how far YouTube hobby content has come since 2008. Scrolling through the videos, you can even find Wade Price of Warhammer Plus and Warhammer TV fame chat about the Tomb King's release, sporting a very noughties hairstyle. So why exactly is this thing renowned for being so bad? Well, some of the main complaints were about similar things as we see these days with airbrushes. It seems that finding the right paint consistency and getting paint clogged in the gun was as much of a challenge then as it can be now. The main issue, however, seems to have just been getting the thing to work consistently. Using a can of propellant rather than using a compressor causes dramatic changes in pressure, which means that getting the spray gun to work consistently and give an even finish was a challenge to say the least. Back in the late noughties, message boards and forums were a far more popular way for hobbyists to connect compared to today's plethora of social media. And from reading through posts about the spray gun on some of these older forums, it's pretty clear that this thing really was not popular. Most of the threads are about how bad it was and essentially encourage people not to buy it. There are still 2 reviews on this on Amazon, although it has clearly been unavailable for several years now, both giving it a 1-star review, and neither of them, as you can guess, are particularly positive. Paul starts his review off with a quick and easy way of making a mess of your house, yourself and your models, whilst Dan keeps it short and straight to the point with a simple stay away. Now, despite Dan's warning, I decided to be a little rebel and go on the lookout for my very own. Now, joking aside, I wanted to see how bad these really are for myself, so I thought I'd put one of the Citadel spray guns through its paces and see if they really are as bad as the reviews say they are. I'm going to be using this Primaris Dreadnought as my test subject for this little experiment.
Father, why have you forsaken me?
Sorry Dreadnought, somebody's got to be the guinea pig. If it goes horribly, you can have a bath in some nice paint stripper later. How does that sound?
Okay, I didn't want to end up painted like a stupid ultramarine anyway.
Good. So, let's get started. So for my first experiment, I loaded up the spray gun with some thinned Macragge blue, approximately a 50-50 paint to water ratio, and you know what? I'm actually pretty impressed with how it went on. It's not perfect, but without much hassle, it's working and laying down an evenish base coat, at least to start with. As you use the propellant for longer periods, however, the can starts to cool. And as it starts to cool, it starts to lose pressure. And when you lose pressure, well, paint stops coming out. And this seems to have been one of the biggest issues with the spray gun. Instead of carrying on with the propellant and getting frustrated, I'm changing it up a bit and connecting it up to my compressor to get a more even and consistent airflow. I want to see whether I can apply any highlights with the spray gun, so I'm mixing up another thin batch of paint, this time Calgar Blue, and trying to just catch the higher areas of the model. Finally, I'm seeing just how much accuracy I can get with the spray gun, and I mixed up some gold paint to try and colour in the Aquila and the shoulder pads on the Dreadnought, and I'm having a go at painting on the gold armour of the Sigmar dude. Okay, so initially I didn't think this was as bad as some of the reviews made it out to be. In terms of applying a base coat, it did an okay job, but trying to do any detail work with it proved pretty much impossible. So for applying highlights or painting in some more selected areas, it's really not the right tool for the job. A lot of airbrushes these days have a dual action where you can simultaneously control the amount of air and paint that goes through the brush, whereas with this there is zero control of the paint and the air is pretty much all or nothing. Performance did get a little bit more consistent when I started using the compressor, but ultimately, if you're using a compressor, then you may as well just have an airbrush to go with it. One of my biggest frustrations was the amount of mess it made when trying to mix the paints. No matter what I did, it just seemed to go everywhere because there are some tiny holes in the lid to let air in as the paint is drawn out. So I think this is always going to be a messy process. Because the containers are pretty big compared to the amount of paint you would probably need, you need to mix up a fair amount of thinned paint to get them to work. If there's not enough paint in the container, then it can't be drawn up by the tube. It's not a problem if you're base coating a load of models, but for a one-off, it feels really wasteful. Ultimately though, I don't think these were ever designed to be an airbrush alternative. It's called a spray gun rather than an airbrush for a reason, and I'm actually really surprised at how well it base coated the models. In this day and age, we also have so many unboxings and reviews and tutorials online. It's become so easy for us to share best practice for using these sorts of tools. But back in 2008, we didn't have these sorts of resources available to learn from like we have now. So ultimately, I'm not sure whether they deserve the really bad rep that they got now that I've used one for myself. They certainly have some real issues, but you know what? It did the job that I think it was intended for. But I'll definitely not be replacing my airbrush with one anytime soon. So did any of you guys own one of these back in the day, or do you still use one? I'd love to know your thoughts, so let me know down in the comments below. If you want to support me, then go and check out all the links down below. There's a link to my Element Games affiliate, which gives me a little kickback every time you make a purchase, and a link to my Patreon program where you can join these absolute rock stars in supporting me each month. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
That's the spot.